Today on Typical Books, I'm going to talk about Gutter Breed by Marty Young. It is a typical book. Here it's a little larger than life. I had to read it as an ebook, although I had really wanted a print book. But shipping from Australia to Canada normally is cost prohibitive, let alone what we're dealing with right now as far as shipping. And I've been really trying to not order things from the internet that way. Certainly not books, as much as it breaks my heart. I've been waiting until bookstores open and things like that. I'd rather go to a bookstore, library, any sort of book sale to pick up books than use Amazon on a good day. And these days, it's just too dangerous. So I just haven't been doing it. But I will say huge thanks to Marty Young for, along with me, entertaining the idea of my getting a review copy of his book in the flesh, or in the paper, in the pulp, as it were. That didn't pan out. So an ebook. Thank you again ever so much, Marty. This is exactly up my alley, and I knew it when I read the synopsis or summary, not the synopsis, or the back cover copy that was provided as a new release to the Horror Writers Association previously. So this caught my eye in a lot of ways, not only because it is gritty, urban, dark horror, not fantasy. It is something that reminded me so much of like a Clive Barker world. And with a title like Gutter Breed, it's not a wonder, because I thought of Nightbreed. And reading the synopsis, it reminded me of Where the Monsters Are. And this is sort of that idea, right, going on in Gutter Breed by Marty Young. And he doesn't have enough books out there for my taste. I really am excited because at the end of this, in the acknowledgements, it is hinted that there will be a sequel. So Ken, to me, is very excited. Gutter Breed is a 2020 release from Eclectic Trio Publishing, who I believe published one of his previous books as well. He's been very involved with the Horror Writers Association and different magazines and editing and things like that. So I really thought he'd be more prolific. So looking at the amount of novels, it's just not as many. So I'm going to have to be on the hunt for some Marty Young short stories, if they exist. His previous work, and of course anything that comes out in the future. Bipolar has ruined Detective Jenny Ashton's life, but when she gets the chance to use the disease for good, she takes it, even though it leads her into a world that shouldn't exist, filled with monsters of the very worst kind. Something lurks within the dark alleyways of Parkton, preying upon the gutter breed forever trapped there, a naturally evolved predator, one the town itself doesn't want, and one Ashton has already faced before. Byron James knows these alleys and the darkness they contain. He spent a lifetime walking them, a lifetime trying to escape. His skin is marred with the passage of his trespass, but he's never encountered anything like this. As Byron guides Ash deeper into insanity on the hunt for a killer, they discover far worse than Albert Skinner Reynolds waiting for them in the dark. A growing nightmare festers in the shadows of Parkton, its madness eager for the real world. Now, Byron James, that character, I didn't, upon reading the synopsis, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm very interested to hear about this killer, Skinner, and I'm very interested in Detective Jenny Ashton because she has this affliction that apparently becomes some sort of boon when you're dealing with something like the gutter breed and where they exist, which is a fantastic place I'll get into in a second. Byron James turns into something, and this is not a spoiler, but something like Constantine, or something. He has tattoos on him that give him passage to this place. There's a few things that I am reminded of in reading Gutter Breed. I am very much reminded of the hunt for Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. That is like number 5, lowest on the list. I'm very much reminded of Silent Hill in the descriptions of the alleyways, because between where the gutter breed dwell and real world Parkton, there is this labyrinthian, expanding, very strange. It reminded me very much of Silent Hill and somewhat of the passageways underneath where Dr. Satan lives in House of a Thousand Corpses, just because it's labyrinthian and dark. But so very much Silent Hill. Read the book and you will see what I mean. So that's number 4. About number 3 on the things that it reminded me of here is House of Leaves in a very small amount, in that there is this labyrinthian, misty, cold, weird, expanding, unexplained place where you walk into this 10-minute hallway that lives between the real world and the unreal world. Number 2 on the list, it reminded me of Nightbreed. And that's to be expected, not only because Gutterbreed, Nightbreed, where the monsters live and things like that. There are some things in here that remind me of, and no lines are lifted. All these things are just shades of things that maybe influenced Mr. Young, maybe are stuck in my mind as such big influences, so I see them everywhere I look. But it does, there is a parallel here. They're very good companion pieces. And another thing that it reminded me of, not maybe the most thing, Gutterbreed and Nightbreed are really the biggest parallels there. And Hellraiser, you want to put some Hellraiser in there. There are some Cenobite type creatures in here. So sort of like this monster, this hybrid of Constantine and Hellraiser, and what I just read by Ramsey Campbell, The Wise Friend. There is mention of a similar deity or demon, if you will, that is mentioned between both books, so it was delightful to me to find some sort of parallel between those two. And I have not spoiled a thing. Trust me, everything that I've talked about here is within the first third of the book. So there's a very interesting journey. I really thought that it would expand in that it could be staged as a play. I really thought that they would go to this one place, then escape and take that knowledge to go to another place, and this big journey. I thought there'd be this big journey. And luckily for me, because I enjoyed where they went in the first place so very much, they remain there. And there's a little dipping back in and out, and there's some characters come and go, like characters tend to do in horror. But for the most part, we meet our cast and we get to know them all, and they have some sort of journey. There is also another thing that this book reminded me of quite a bit, but it doesn't make that list of 5 big influences that I believe were at play here, or things that influenced me that I saw within this book, and that is The Last of Us. And I'm not just saying that for hype, because I know it's so big. 4 million copies, probably 4.5 million by the time I'm saying this, sold worldwide of The Last of Us 2. I'm not a big fan because I've never played them. I've seen them be played. It's one of my husband's favorite games of all time. And he's playing through the second one right now. But I've seen this in urban exploration where people say there's a very Last of Us vibe here, when there are lichens and mosses and grasses and trees overtaking abandoned buildings. That sort of feeling persists within this book. Again, you'd have to read it to see what I mean. It's not overwhelming. It is a subtle thing, but it is a subtle thread spreading like mycelium throughout. It's fantastic. And I like the feel. There's a very 3-dimensional feel in this book that I just loved. And some of the lines that the characters say are contradictory, not to their character, but contradictory to what you would expect if you were writing them stereotypically. And that was very refreshing. From what I understand, that the character, Jenny Ashton, there's some influences of Marty Young's own wife within that. So I found that having that knowledge going in, that he is no tourist when it comes to these mental illnesses, I really appreciated that. And there is some artwork accompanying, which lends itself to not a graphic novel feel, because there's very few illustrations, but it's nice to see that madness portrayed on the page in the text and in an image that has almost got an ink blot sort of feel to it. Very Clive Barker again. I really deeply enjoyed this book. Now, I will say it's not for the faint of heart. This is not 100% a disclaimer or a warning of any sort, but there are, it's not quite splatterpunk, but it's getting close there. It's not quite extreme. There are reasons for every drop of blood spilt in this, but it is quite brutal. So yes, a huge 5 stars for this. I didn't even run the book scorer because I just know it's 5 stars. It's 114. There's nothing in this book I dislike. There's nothing in this book that I would have improved upon. I enjoyed every single page. That said, it's really up my alley. I like extreme, I like violent horror. I like horror that deals with comorbid disorders within people. I like people that don't get along necessarily, because there's quite a bit of that within the relationships between these characters, whether they're villains or not. There's a lot of oil and water in this book, in between people, for lack of a better term. It's a lot of people just do not see eye to eye. There are a lot of arguments. It's very tense from time to time, and I thoroughly enjoyed those tensions, because watching them froth and boil over was fascinating, knowing that we're dealing with an extreme horror novel. So where else is this going to go, right? So yeah, 5 out of 5 to Gutter Breed by Marty Young. So coming up next, I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. So definitely check that out. I always thought that that was a little bit more of a younger YouTuber's game, but upon watching some of the mid-year freakout tags, I realized I should have watched them previously in other years, because it's just a cool catch-up and a cool way to sort of look back on what you've read for the first 6 months, and it's better than an end of the year wrap up for sure. So I'm going to definitely do that tag now that I understand what it is. There I am being ignorant. But anyhow, thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you're reading in the comments below, or if there's anything that you think I ought to be reading, definitely let me know. Thank you again, and have an ooky spooky day.